Yo, what is going on, guys? It's Emilio. Welcome back to another Standoff 2 video. In this one, we are going to be going over the complete guide to improving your aim in Standoff 2. We're going to talk about sensitivity and controls. We're going to talk about crosshair. We're going to go through my full aim training routine and give you guys some different drills and things that you can practice to improve your mechanical skills. And then also we'll go over some tips and tricks and some gameplay, game sense kind of things that you can use to improve your skills and overall play better and improve your aim. So let's start with settings. This is something that's going to be very different from player to player. There's no real one size fits all here. When it comes to things like your sensitivity and your crosshair, these are things that might be different from player to player based on your preference, based on your device, based on your layout and how you have your buttons set up. So all of these things are kind of just like, you can take it with a grain of salt. This is what I do, but at the end of the day, you're going to want to find something that works for you. So when it comes to controls, I left my settings pretty much default. I think the only thing that I turned down was my scope sensitivity. Acceleration I left at 1 and aim smoothing I left all the way up. It's hard for me to tell you what the best sensitivity is for you and for your device. Generally speaking, like if you have your thumb on the screen and you do like a drag across, ideally in game, you'd want to be able to do like a 360 or a 180 at least. So like if 2 drags across the screen is a 180 and a 180, so you've done a full circle, that's probably good. But when it comes to like doing flick shots and other things, there's so many factors to it. So sensitivity is one of those ones where you kind of just have to experiment and figure it out for yourself. Find something that feels comfortable and then stick with it. That's probably the biggest tip that I can give you when it comes to your sensitivity. Is the goal here is to build up muscle memory. You want to be able to get to a point where your aiming is autonomous. That's the true goal of this entire video, is to get you to a point where you have practiced your aim so much that you don't have to think about it. Because the players that are playing at the top level, they're not thinking about their crosshair placement or their aim or their spray control. These are things that they've drilled so many times that it's just autonomous. It happens without them having to think about it. That's the real goal here. You want to be thinking about throwing your grenades. You want to be thinking about lineups. You want to be thinking about taking control over certain areas of the map. You want to be thinking about rotations, what other players might be doing, how to set up your teammates to make a play, to take some space or to get a kill or trade frag. Those are the kinds of things that you want to be thinking about when you're playing the game at a high level. So the aim has to be down pat. You can't be worried about your aim at all. So these are some things that you can do to kind of improve that. But at the end of the day, none of it's going to be beneficial to you if you don't build up the muscle memory with your sensitivity and some of these basic settings. So once you find something that works, stick with it and don't change it unless you absolutely have to. I've run this same sensitivity for like 3 years. I'm very comfortable with it, proficient at it, and my aim has improved steadily over time because I've gotten more used to my sensitivity over time. Let's talk about the crosshair. These are the settings that I use. If you want to copy these, you can. Crosshair is another one of those things that's kind of based on individual preference. For me, I just found that this particular setup, the size of the crosshair, for most distances in game, a player model's head will fit perfectly inside the little center box that this crosshair makes. So for me, this is the one that's given me the most consistency. I hit headshots the cleanest with this one. I've just gotten used to it. Sometimes I change the size, sometimes I change the color. Crosshair is one of those things where it doesn't really affect your gameplay too much, but I do notice that if I find myself getting a little bit lazy with my aim, sometimes I'll change the color or a little bit of the crosshair just to get some different stimulation for my eyes, and I feel like it forces you to pay a little more attention and be a little more conscious about where you're putting your crosshair because you know that it's changed. You have to aim a little bit differently. I don't do it too often, only every once in a while if I feel like I've hit a plateau or if I'm getting stagnant or not hitting shots that I should. When it comes to your video settings, I've made a whole other video talking about the best settings for performance. A lot of that has to do with your device. I'll have that video pop up in a second here, but really the biggest thing you want to get is 120 FPS. If your device supports it, 120 FPS is the biggest change that you can make that's going to improve your gameplay. Anything else is kind of just a quality of life sort of deal. It's nice to have high quality graphics, but it doesn't necessarily make you a better player. 120 FPS will allow you to start hitting shots that you normally wouldn't. It will give you the best gameplay, the best experience overall. And really, just the higher the refresh rate you can get, the better. If you have an Android device, there is a setting that you can go to in your phone to go from 60 to 120 hertz for your refresh rate of your device, and that will allow you to unlock 120 FPS inside of Standoff 2. I have an iPhone, so I can't show you that, but if you do have an Android device, there's a way to do it. That's really it for settings. When it comes to controls, again, I'll have a link in the description. You can copy this exact layout if you want. I do have kind of a different play style than most people. I play claw, but only on one side. So I have 2 fingers on my left hand for firing and using the joystick to move. And then on the right side, I have just my thumb. I feel like it gives me a way bigger range of motion. So if you're playing claw, you're just kind of using smaller movements with your fingers like this. With my thumb, I can move it pretty much all the way across my screen, or at least halfway across the screen. So this gives me so much more freedom to like move and make big adjustments on screen when it comes to aiming. So for me, this is what I'm rocking right now. I might change this in the future if I feel like it becomes kind of a limiting factor to improving at the game. But for right now, for me, this is what works. Again, I know this is very unorthodox and this is very not kosher compared to what a lot of other players use. And generally speaking, most people would recommend to play claw, which I kind of do, but just a different version of it with less fingers. So that's my setup. Honestly, don't know if I recommend copying it, but it works for me. Doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And that's pretty much it when it comes to settings. So let's talk about kind of a warm-up routine or aim training routine. We're going to do 2 different things. There's just a couple drills that we can do inside of the game in Standoff 2 in the polygon training map. And then we're also going to show you guys AimLab. AimLab is a different app that you can download. We'll get there in a second, but let's start with the things that we can do inside of the game. All right, so we're loaded up here. Let's just switch over to the AK and the Deagle. These are the weapons that I typically use when I'm training aim. However, I do recommend using all the other rifles especially as well, and just get used to the different spray patterns for the different guns. We'll get there in a second though. Really, when it comes to aim, you've got a couple different categories. So you've got your flicks, which is moving quickly from one target to a next with accuracy and precision. You've got spraying, which is basically how can you control the recoil of the gun to make sure that you are staying on target and hitting as many bullets where you want them to go as possible. And then you have your movement mechanics, which is basically taking all the other things like tracking, spraying, and combining it with crouching or strafing, which is just moving side to side. So we'll cover a couple of drills that you can use to practice all of these. First things first, if you go to moving targets and hit start, wait for the bots to show up. And what you can do is you can stand still at first and just try your best to keep your crosshair on the head of the bots. This is very difficult to do. It's going to take some practice. I'm not very good at it. It's easier to do in AimLab. There's a lot of other drills that you can do because these bots are very quick and very random. So this is a good practice for keeping your tracking skills up, which is just being able to accurately keep your crosshair moving on target across the screen. If you want to level up and make things a little bit more difficult, you can be moving while trying to track the bot. So for example, if I wanted to track this guy, I can be moving to the left and keep my crosshair on him as best I can. Very difficult, as you can see, but it's worth practicing. It's worth giving a shot. This is one of the first things that I usually do just to sort of get my fingers used to my sensitivity again and get things kind of flowing. It's kind of usually step 1 in the warm up. The next thing that you can do is your spray control. So if you come over to this board here, you can see the spray pattern for the AK-47. I actually held down a little bit by just reflex there. But you can see the spray pattern for the AK-47 goes up, to the right, to the left, and then back to the right towards the end of the magazine. So whenever you're trying to control a spray pattern for a gun, you're just gonna do the exact opposite. So in this case, the pattern goes up, to the right, to the left, to the right. We're gonna go down, to the left, to the right, to the left. So basically the exact opposite of this pattern. And when you put it all together, it looks something like this. Generally, if you can control the first like 10 to 15 bullets of a magazine, that's really what you're gonna be using mostly in game. It's very rare that you have a situation where you're gonna spray a full 30 bullet magazine and not have a, positional change or, movement, or you can like even just take a second to pause to kind of reset the spray pattern. So really, if you can control just like the vertical section of the recoil, you're pretty much good to go. So for the most part, it's like down and to the left a little bit and to the right. If you want to aim like kind of as your goal of just being able to keep your spray kind of in one of these boxes, that's pretty good. And the tighter your grouping, the better. Now, if we switch here, what I'll do is I'll show you the AK-47 right here. We'll do the M4A1 and we'll do the M4 and the FAL. And you can see that most of them are pretty much the same. It almost looks like a 7 once the spray is complete, but they go up to the right, to the left, and back to the right. Slightly different variations at slightly different speeds. As you can see, the FAMAS goes up and then quicker to the right. The FAL, you have a couple more bullets that are straight up and down and vertical. So overall, most of the spray patterns are the same, which means that practicing your spray in general is going to give you a pretty good grasp on most of the rifles. The SMGs can be a little bit different, but generally it's just kind of more of the same. You've got your vertical for the first couple bullets, and then you start to move right to left. So just getting a hang of this spray pattern is going to allow you to be so accurate with your guns. So take a little bit of time to practice using each of the weapons and just do some spraying and controlling it and trying to keep it inside of the box. And then after that, what you can do is you can move on and start spraying actual targets. So if you do static and start, what you can do is you can stand still and you can spray the targets. All right, the next thing after dialing in your spray patterns is learning how to do bursts and moving or crouching. And this is where there's two kind of styles of play. So if you watch a lot of higher level players or a lot of pros even, they do this thing where they're kind of moving and they're crouching a lot, and they're taking peeks where they're gonna like crouch into the angle. So like, let's say that this is the wall. They might come out and swing it like with a crouch like this and kind of like crouch into the angle or crouch out of it. And obviously the point of this is because when you're crouched, you're way more accurate. If we do a spray without crouching, it looks like this. If we do a spray while crouching, it looks like that. So obviously very dramatic difference. It's basically like 50% more accurate and easier to control when you're crouched. So there is an advantage to crouching, especially if you are going to commit to a long spray. But what I like to do, and you can do basically both variations where you crouch and spray like that, or what you can do is what I prefer, which is more movement based, where you're strafing left to right and just doing small bursts. So notice how in between shots, I'm kind of moving left to right like this, taking a couple shots like this, bursting, and incorporating movement in between. In my opinion, this is a lot more effective. And I like to play a lot more aggressive and kind of just like a high movement, very aggressive and very like in and out and just moving around and kind of duking and dodging around bullets kind of. So you can see that these two different variations do have their pros and cons. If you're crouching, you're gonna be much more accurate and not have to worry about controlling your spray as much. But if you're doing like a strafing method where you're kind of moving back and forth between shots or firing small bursts, you're gonna be much more mobile. I like to play like this, where I'm hyper aggressive, very high movement, moving around a lot on the map, trying to just like out move and out spray opponents, instead of crouching where you're more accurate, yes, but you're also very committed to taking a fight once you crouch. As soon as you crouch, your movement speed is way slower. Yes, you're more accurate, but you're basically fully committed to just taking whatever fight you peeked into and spraying until you're essentially dead or you kill the other player. If you guys watch CS2 and you're familiar with the player Donk, who's one of the best in the world right now, the way that he plays is very much similar to the way that I like to think about playing in Standoff 2, which is firing bullets, spraying and moving, sliding, going back and forth. And if you immediately crouch into an angle, you've basically killed all the movement. You're gonna be way slower. It takes a lot of time to crouch and start moving at full speed again, versus if you commit to playing a little bit more aggressively with your movement and have to be a little bit better at your spray control. Strafing back and forth between bullets or after a couple bursts can be very effective, and it's going to force your opponents to correct their aim every time you move. So if both of you guys are crouching and peeking into an angle and just spraying each other, whoever has the best spray or the best ping in some situations is going to win. If you're moving constantly, forcing a player to readjust their aim, it's making it a very difficult shot for them to hit, and it can give you an advantage in some situations. Honestly, in my opinion, the perfect thing to do is kind of combine all of this, where you've got a little bit of spray, a little bit of high movement, and this is something that we can't really account for, which is game sense. And at the end of the day, the more that you play and learn how to use these different styles of shooting and spraying, and the more you practice these mechanics, the better that you're gonna be at the game. And then once you play over and over and learn certain situations, what works, what doesn't, you'll start to develop a style of your own and know when to use these different methods and when it's a good opportunity to go for a peek, crouch, and commit to it, or when it's good to just stay mobile and spray a couple bullets and move side to side to just basically outmove and outmaneuver your opponent. So we've covered tracking, we've covered spraying, we've covered flicks. Another thing you can do is just try to be as accurate as possible and go for headshots. So just take your time, make sure you line up the one taps and just try to go as quickly as possible, moving from opponent to opponent, and just try to be clean with it. Don't rush, just really try your best to make sure that you're hitting the shots and being as accurate as possible. Otherwise, there's not really a point. You might as well just be spraying. But yeah, you can do that as well. Another thing that's good is to practice with the deagle. And just again, taking a step to the left or right in between shots, getting used to moving and adjusting your crosshair, making those tiny little adjustments. So yeah, you can do your spray control at the beginning, you can do your flicks, you can do your crouching and spraying, you can do your strafing and spraying, and that's pretty much it when it comes to what you can accomplish here in game in the training area. So next, let's move over to aim labs and we'll check out some of the drills that you can do there to practice and improve your aim. All right, so welcome to aim lab. If you guys have never seen this before, I'll have a link to it in the description. You can download it on the App Store or the Google Play Store. And the first thing you're gonna wanna do is go to the settings, go to sensitivity, and try to find something that matches your sensitivity in Standoff 2 as closely as possible. You guys saw my sensitivity in my settings in Standoff earlier, so if you rock the same sensitivity as me, this is pretty close to what it is in Standoff 2. I still need to adjust this a little bit. I think the acceleration is slightly different, but this is close enough to feel like I can play this and play Standoff back to back and not feel like a huge difference. So you're going to want to go to your sensitivity and get that all dialed in. You can make your crosshair pretty much the same as well. You can see that I've done most of that. And then what you can do is go to training, and you've got a couple different categories for skills. So you've got cognition, which is basically like decision making. You've got flicking, perception, which is how quickly you can react. So your reaction time essentially. You've got precision, which is moving to smaller targets very quickly. You've got speed, which is moving your crosshair accurately back and forth as quickly as you can. And then you've got tracking, which we talked about a little bit before. So I'll just kind of show you guys some of the individual games from all of these. And what I like to do is go to playlists in the top right here, and then daily warm-up has 6 tasks that you can do, which cover all of the different skills essentially. And yeah, grid shot is probably like one of the more popular ones. So we'll just play this and show you guys like some different ways that you can practice your aim. So this one, every time you shoot a bullet, a new one pops up. So this one is practicing your flicks, moving quickly from one target to the next. There's a little bit of delay when I'm screen recording, so this is not like my best work here, but generally speaking, this will get you very familiar with your sensitivity. And it's good for being able to make quick decisions in game, moving from angle to angle. This is one of my favorite drills. It's really fun. This is also probably one of the harder ones, to be honest, at least to get like a decent score in. So, all right, so that's grid shot. If we go to the next one, this is sphere track. So this one practices your tracking. Basically, you're gonna wanna keep your crosshair in the center of this ball for the entirety of the drill, which is difficult to do. And you can see when it flashes to a different color, that's when you need to basically get back on target and recorrect your aim. So this one, if you've got like a buttery smooth sensitivity and you're really familiar with it, your tracking is gonna be relatively easy. This one can be difficult at times, but you just really gotta focus and try to keep the crosshair in the center so that if you have to make big, quick adjustments, you're kind of like a little bit ahead of the ball, so to speak. No pun intended. All right, so that's sphere tracking. Let's go to the next one. This is spider shot. So basically what we're gonna do is shoot a target in the center and then try to shoot one that's off to one of the sides. All right, so that's spider shot. The next one is motion shot. So it's basically the same thing as spider shot, but this time the targets that are on the outside are going to be moving. So we shoot this and we have to flick to a target that's also in motion. All right, so that's motion shot. Next one, we've got decision shot. So basically you have to shoot the color of the balloon that was just previously shown. So it's either gonna be red to red or blue to blue. All right, so that's decision shot. And then the last one, we have detection. So basically what you're gonna do is as soon as a balloon is on the screen, you're going to tap to shoot. And essentially what it's gonna do is measure your reaction time. All right, so that's the drills that I like to run. It's called daily warm up in the playlist, and it'll take you through some of those. And that's pretty much what we like to do inside of Aim Lab. So let's jump back into Standoff 2 for sort of the last section of this, which is taking all these skills, all these trainings and drills that we've done, applying them to the game, using a little bit of game sense and a couple other tips and tricks, and putting all of these things together and practicing them is really what's going to help you improve your aim. All right, so now that we're back in game, there's a couple things that I want to talk about very briefly. One of them is crosshair placement, and the other kind of has to do with crosshair placement, but it's more so how you place certain angles and where you're going to want to be sort of pre-aiming as you're either clearing or defending certain positions. So let's just talk generally about crosshair placement. This is probably the #1 thing that you can do to improve your gameplay right away if you're a noob player. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen players in the game that are walking around with their gun pointed at the ground like this, and then someone starts to shoot them and they just spray up and try to wildly find their target. They miss a bunch of shots and they're usually pretty easy to kill because they're looking at the ground. You always want to keep your crosshair at headshot height. So when you're walking around, when you're moving, when you're snapping between angles, keep your crosshair at the position where you anticipate the next enemy's head is going to show up. And there's a couple other things that kind of spin off of this. So the first thing is, let's say you're playing middle on Rust here as a CT. Generally speaking, the Ts will come through this door and they're gonna swing. They might pop a flashbang, they might have a smoke up. If there's a smoke here, they're definitely gonna want to get through the smoke fast and start to take fights from this guy, or maybe come around the corner and fight one of the people here. So basically they're gonna be moving, right? They're gonna be coming around this corner. They're not gonna stop and jiggle you. They're gonna try to get out of the smoke. They're gonna try to, get in front of the flashbang, whatever the case may be. So if you're a CT and you're holding here and you're peeking, or if you're just holding the angle or moving back and forth, or maybe you hear them, their footsteps, you're going out for a peek, generally you're not gonna wanna hold your crosshair right at the angle of the door, like the edge of the door, because as soon as they peek out, you're gonna have to adjust your aim right away, right? If there's a player moving, the last thing you wanna have to do is track them right away, make adjustments to your aim right away. When a player appears on your screen, there's a couple milliseconds of delay where your brain has to, for one, identify that it's an enemy, that it's someone that you need to shoot. Two, determine if your crosshair is on target or not. And then three, make any micro adjustments to get your crosshair to where you actually want it to be. Then decide to commit to spraying or tapping at that target at that position. And that's, basically from first sight to end of the engagement, what's going to be happening in your brain. And there's obviously a little bit of a delay between when you register that there's a player on your screen and when you're able to actually shoot them. So what I like to do, especially if you're holding an angle and you're anticipating someone pushing out quickly, is don't have your crosshair at headshot height right at the corner of the angle where you're expecting them to be right away. You can hold your crosshair out of the angle a little bit. So let's just use this corner as an example. If I was expecting someone to swing wide here into CT spawn, maybe I have my crosshair right here instead of right at the angle, because by the time I see them come around the corner and shoot, they're going to be moving still. If they have higher or lower ping, this makes a huge difference too. So instead of having to try to hit a flick shot, what I can do is just keep my crosshair kind of right here and be ready for them. And by the time I see them, they've walked into my crosshair, and now my brain can just decide that I'm going to shoot them and I can tap them in the head. Alternatively, an instance where you might want to do the opposite of that. So a lot of times On Rust, the T's will push out into this position where I just threw the Molotov. They'll be up here, and what they're gonna try to do is either throw a grenade or throw flashbang or something down this door, and they're gonna try to peek and maybe kill some of the CTs that are crossing over the doors or trying to spray the guys that play down in water. So in that case, what you're gonna wanna do, if you're gonna peek this angle, you don't want to have your crosshairs super far away or off of the angle. In this case, you do want to clear it and have your crosshair right on the corner, because you want to be able to see this person as soon as possible, right? You don't want your crosshair out here and then reacting inwards. What you want to do is just basically be able to peek and see them right away. So you're making this tiny little movement, keeping your crosshair right on the edge and at headshot height. Notice how headshot height right here, where my gun is currently aimed at, if I back up and go across, it's not headshot height for someone that's coming out of the door. It'd be closer to here. So this is where you kind of combine crosshair placement with tracking and predicting sort of where your next enemy is going to be. And this is a skill that you can practice moving around the map, basically going through the order that you're going to clear angles in. So as you approach the door here, your headshot height might be here. As you round the corner, the next angle that you're going to have to play is basically anyone that's up here on the stairs. So your headshot height goes from here up to here as you're crossing, and then it goes back down to someone playing water, someone playing in the corner, someone right here. And then as you come around the corner, it might come back up here. You might be aiming up here for someone playing on that. You might have to clear this. Someone's playing back here, someone playing up here. So this is a really good drill that you can do, is basically, find your consistent crosshair height and then also move through the different maps, clearing the angles as if you were taking or retaking a site, and basically move between the different angles and notice how your crosshair changes in its height and position based off of where you're going to be trying to anticipate an enemy being. And that's something that you can do really easily. Go through one map at a time and just practice moving through the different angles coming from different positions onto a site. And what you're going to want to do is basically try to pre-aim and find the angles that are going to, or find the route, find the pathing through the site that's going to allow you to cleanly transition through the most angles as efficiently as possible, and ideally try to avoid making a peak that exposes you to more than one fight at a time. So for example, you're always going to want to be kind of pre-aiming or pre-firing where the next person could be. So if I come around here, I've cleared this position right here. Next, what I'm going to do is peek like this and try to, make sure there's no one holding this angle from, playing on the broken wall. If I peek like this, make sure there's no one on this box. Next is going to be someone right here playing in between the two barrels, the wood box and the silo thing. Then you've got to worry about a fight from someone playing behind right here. After that, you've got someone that could be playing on the back there. Then you've got potential for someone to be here, here. And now as you move out onto the site, if you've cleared that, you might have to worry about someone pushing CT, or if you hold this back ball, you're gonna wanna clear someone playing back here on this side or right in this corner as well. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can kind of learn or train how to do this. Playing retake servers when they have escalation as a limited time mode is really great for this, because it's basically just, you're playing the most important clutch moments of the game when you have to either take or hold a site after the bomb's been planted. And that's when there's gonna be high pressure. You have to go through, clear all the different angles and do so very quickly. And the fastest way and the easiest way to make sure you can do that and win the round is know the correct pathing through the site and know where you're gonna be able to pre-aim, and keeping your crosshair always ready for the next target, no matter where they're at. So those are the best tips that I can give you for improving your aim right away. The last part that we talked about kind of involves a little bit of game sense. That's something that you can only acquire really by playing the game, by playing against better players. Don't always just go into team deathmatch or defuse and go for pub stomping matches. I did that a lot and it's fun, but eventually you start to realize that if you're gonna get better at the game, you're gonna play against people that are better than you. Ultimately, that's what allows you to learn and get better. And also, the things that work against lower level players or less experienced players aren't gonna work as you start to level up and rank up and play people who have been in the game for much longer than you, that are much better than you, probably have better aim and better game sense than you too. So you really have to develop that. It's kind of a sixth sense that kind of just happens over time. And yeah, you can really only learn that by playing the game and applying these things. But All the other stuff, the mechanical skill, your actual ability to aim and master your sensitivity, master the spray patterns, all of that stuff is stuff that you can train via the methods that we told you earlier in this video. So get to it. Work on your aim. I have a settings video. I have a bunch of other map tutorials coming soon with grenades, lineup, tips and tricks, stuff like that. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you made it this far, you're a real one. You might as well drop a like as well. I appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed this video, there will be more Standoff 2 content on the screen that you can click and watch right now. I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, peace.